Hello, and welcome to Improbable Things. I'm J. Grace Pennington, and this is my podcast where I share 6 improbable thoughts before breakfast, which for this podcast consists of 6 thoughts about reading, writing, or storytelling in general. So I've got up early, got my 6 thoughts, and I am ready to get started. So number 1, continuing to work slowly but surely on getting ready to edit my current work in progress, which is called Progenitor. And what I've been doing, for those that don't know my editing process, is I have a printed out manuscript and I'm going over it with a red pencil to just make note of the changes I need to make when I do the actual rewrite. So it has been, as I said, slow but sure. But I should just have a couple more days of that part of the process, and then I will do a rewrite from scratch where I open up a complete new document, put the marked up manuscript next to me, and type it all out. And rather than going into the existing document and making changes, I always do this for my first big rewrite. I just type out the whole thing all over again, making changes as I go, and that's just always been how I found it's actually the least overwhelming and gives me the most big picture view of the story, because I'm just able to really, because also a lot of the things that need to be changed are things like parts where there might be some sentence structure issues or some things that seem awkward, or things like that. And so it just helps to really just rewrite all those sentences, and be able to get them the way they need to be, sort of in a more organic way, by just, almost starting all over again. Even though I am mostly copying the printed out manuscript that I have, it's still, I know it sounds like a lot of extra work, but for me, it's been so much easier to do it that way, rather than going into the document and trying to make little changes here and there and missing things, and just, I don't know. It's just always been my process. And so all that to say, I should be able to start work on that, I would guess maybe next Monday. And I think I'm going to try to finish that rewrite by the end of the month, which will be a lot of work, but I'm really ready to be done with this part of the process and to move on and get this story to y'all. So I think I'm gonna buckle down and try to do that. So stay tuned for more information. So number 2, I had a really great reading time yesterday. It's been getting pretty hot here, but the past week has actually not been too bad, and especially because our backyard has a big tree in it that honestly shades most of the yard. We have a couple big trees actually. And so yesterday my girls were just kind of going crazy with too much energy, so I said, let's just go outside. So we have this playpen the baby can play in outside, so I set her up in the shade in her playpen with some toys. Other girls started playing, and I just got a blanket and put it down, and I laid down in the grass and I read, and we were out there for over an hour, and I finished reading my book and just sort of hung out, and my girls would come occasionally and just sit next to me or lay next to me and talk, and it was such a wonderful time, just being outside reading and hanging out. And one thing I've also done several afternoons is I usually have a few days a week that I'm trying to get in 10,000 steps during the day. And so what I started doing is going out a little bit during the afternoon with my book and just walking back and forth in the yard and reading. And there's just something about reading outside. I used to do that a lot when I was younger, and I don't so much now. And that's partly because our yard is absolutely full of mosquitoes, so I have to slather myself in bug spray before, if I don't want to get eaten alive. But it has been so great. We all know it's so good for you to be outside, and there's just something extra charming to me too about reading outside. And I find, as I was laying there yesterday finishing up my book, I thought, I really miss this, just being out, in nature, and some nice weather, you've got the breeze and the blue sky and reading a good book, and it's just, there's nothing really like it. And so until it gets absolutely too hot to be out in the afternoons, which it definitely will, I'm going to keep trying to do a bunch of that. So number 3, my oldest and I have had a special thing we do together for the past few months now. We usually do this like once a week. And now she is my quality time girl. Like, I realized very early on in her life that love language, her love language definitely is quality time. She's always wanting to do things together. It means so much to her when we do. And so I always look for those things. And back, I think when I was pregnant with her, my husband had bought me this book that has a little story. Half of it is like a little story with these little crocheted bug characters. And then the last half of the book is patterns to actually crochet the little characters. And so he thought maybe someday, when our kids are born and are a little bit older, maybe y'all can make these together. He thought it would be fun. And so I pulled that out finally, and I said, hey, let's read this story, and then you can pick one of the characters and we'll work on it, and then maybe we'll make some more. So, and then she picked a little snail, and so we went to the store, we got all the yarn, and so what we've been doing like once a week is the other girls go to bed, because also the other part of the story is she'd been asking for a long time before this, sometime when the other girls go to sleep, can I stay up with you and me, just you and me, do something together? So this was me trying to fulfill that wish. So about once a week, whenever I have a chance, the other girls go to bed and she and I stay up. I work on crocheting whatever the character is that we're currently working on, and then we watch Little House on the Prairie, because I wanted something to watch with her, and I don't think that's the greatest show of all time, but it's clean enough that I thought we'll just enjoy watching that together. We can talk about it, whatever. So it's been fun, and we finished the snail, and he turned out really cute, and then she picked a little caterpillar to work on next. So we just started working on that a couple nights ago, and so she just sits there and we watch the show, and she asks me questions about it while I try not to lose count of the sort of complicated amount of stitches I have to do for these little characters. And we're just slowly making our way through the show and through these little bugs, and it's just been really sweet. And it flashes me back, like, I've never watched a whole lot of Little House on the Prairie, but the few times I did watch it was usually with my mom if we were hanging out, or if we were on vacation. A few times we watched it together. And I remember also, asking her all the questions about things that were going on when I was really little. And with my daughter especially, like, she'll be 6 in a couple of months, and the world just seems to be like exploding for her. Like, she is constantly figuring out new things and telling me how things that she realized, and telling me her theories about things, like so much more lately even than before. And she's always been a talker, but there's just something I can tell really going on lately, where she's just having so many new thoughts and realizations, and wheels turning and light bulbs going off, and it's so much fun to watch. And so she'll tell me all her thoughts and theories about why people are doing what they're doing in the show, and it's been so special. So I'm really glad I thought of that. And we, after working on it for several weeks, we only had just last week finished the little snail. So it's definitely going to take a while for us to get through all these characters, which should be good. I mean, the point is to spend time together. So it's been really sweet. Number 4, I actually just in the past few days finished 3 books and all of them were good, but I'm going to pick a couple of them to go over for currently reading, even though I'm technically not currently reading any of them. But first I'm going to talk about for my book club is tonight, and I just finished the book club book a few days ago, and it's called The Awakening of Miss Prim, and I absolutely loved it so much. Like, it was pure delight from beginning to end. While I was reading it, I was already looking forward to rereading it, and I had to hold myself back from writing down too many quotes to share with my book club, because otherwise I think I would have been quoting almost the whole book. It was constantly making me smile, making me think. The writing was just delightful. And it was one of the recommendations from the Book Girl book that I've talked about many times. And I did not remember, she has different sections of book lists, different categories in that book. And I did not remember what category this one was in. I had kind of just gone over some of the books and picked one that I thought sounded good for book club. And as I was reading it, I kept just thinking, this is just so delightful. Like, that was just the word that kept coming to mind. And when I went back and looked at it in the Book Girl book, I found it was under a category heading called Books to Kindle Delight. And so that was so funny that that was the exact word that I kept thinking of, because it was just so true. Like, it was just delightful and charming, thought-provoking. And I'm so glad that I read it, and can definitely already tell that I'm going to be rereading it multiple times. But I am going to be curious what the people at book club think. I know there are quite a few people that didn't get to read it because it's was a little bit hard to get a hold of. It's not at a lot of libraries, and there's not an audiobook of it in English, although the book was originally in Spanish, and I believe there is a Spanish audiobook. So several people I know didn't get to read it, and I know even as I was reading, I could tell probably this book would not be for everyone. And sure enough, when I looked at the Goodreads reviews after I finished it, it does seem to be one of those like love it or hate it. Like, there were several people that felt just the way I did, and then some people going, this was so stupid, what was the point of this book? Like, it's just one of those things. It's just not for everyone. And then I posted about it in a reading group that I'm in on Facebook, and had pretty much the same reaction. Several people going, I loved it, and some people going, oh, I just didn't get it. It was over my head, or there was no plot, which is true. There was not it was not very plot heavy, but it was just right for what it was supposed to be, in my opinion. So The Awakening of Miss Prim, I loved it. I'll be very curious to hear what people think about it at book club tonight. I certainly have lots of thoughts to share, and I'm just really glad that I read it. Number 5, on some more reading. Yesterday, I just finished Blackout by Connie Willis. I know I've talked about some of her other books in the same series on here before. So this, I believe the series is called the Oxford Time Travel series. And first I read the first book, Doomsday Book, and then To Say Nothing of the Dog. And this book is called Blackout. And I really loved Doomsday Book. Like, absolutely loved it. To Say Nothing of the Dog was not my favorite as much, but I still enjoyed it a lot. And so I figured I'll just continue on this series. And what was interesting is those first 2 books were written in the 90s, and then Blackout and the 4th book, All Clear, were both written in 2010. So I was very interested to see, excuse me, how that affected her writing style or whatever, but it's hard to really say, because also between the first 2, To Say Nothing of the Dog and Doomsday Book, they were so different. It's almost hard to compare them. Like, they're completely different in tone, mostly different characters, like a lot of that. And these books, or I shouldn't say these, Blackout, which I just finished, is also a few of the same characters, but a lot of different characters, and also a different tone in a lot of ways from the other 2. But I really enjoyed it. It has a lot of different storylines going, and a lot of things going on that, you're trying to figure out why they're happening and stuff like that. And I had guessed, both from the fact that they were both released the same year, and from a few other things that I'd heard, that probably between Blackout and the 4th book, All Clear, it was sort of a part 1 and 2 situation. So I was sort of prepared for Blackout to end on a total cliffhanger. But still, I got to the end and just like, so got to get the next book on hold at the library right now. So it's on hold. So I need to find out what happens next. I have my theories about what's going on, but it's all very interesting. And it's also set in World War II, which is something even though I've read some World War II books, and obviously I have some like very basic knowledge of World War II, but this, I feel like she's done this with all her books it has really immersed me in that time period in a way I don't think other books have that I've read. And so that's really cool also. Like it just makes that come alive. And it's also science fiction. And the writer apparently is a Christian, we found out. And so, more Christian science fiction. Yes, please. I'm all in. So we'll have to see how the story ends once I can get the next book from the library. But in the meantime, I'm enjoying them, and one of my friends is going through them as well, and so we've been able to chat a little bit, although she hasn't finished Blackout, so I need her to finish it so that we can talk about it. I already accidentally gave her one spoiler, so I want to avoid doing that again. So number 6, for Mother's Day, we didn't do much. We just kind of relaxed together, hung out, had some of my favorite food. And one thing I wanted to do was have burgers from my favorite burger place with my husband at home after the girls had gone to bed and watch a movie. And I couldn't think of really anything I particularly wanted to see, but I have wanted to see the movie Twister for a while. And then I saw there's I don't think it's a remake, but I don't know, a reboot or something in the same universe coming out soon. So I was like, oh, I should watch that. So doesn't seem like a very Mother's Day movie, but that's fine. I got it out from the library because it wasn't streaming anywhere. And my husband and I watched it, and it was great. It was the kind of scary that I like, where it's not like gory or anything. It's just the danger and the suspense and, all that. And I do like those kind of movies. It reminded me a lot of Jurassic Park, which is one of my favorite movies. And I found out while reading the credits, it was a lot of the same people that had worked on Jurassic Park. So that might be why. But it did get me thinking about the 5 types of conflict in fiction, which basically is man versus man, man versus self, man versus nature, man versus the supernatural, and man versus society. Although, as I was looking to make sure I had those 5 right, I also found people starting to say that there's 7 and referencing the other 2 being man versus technology and man versus fate, which is interesting. And I do think it kind of depends on how you categorize certain things. But all that to say, one thing I kind of noticed as we're watching Twister is that, to me at least, it was almost more terrifying to be dealing with the tornadoes than to be dealing with a monster like in Jurassic Park or, a monster movie. Because with a tornado, there's no possible way for it to be, reasoned with or outsmarted or tricked in any way like you can with a monster. With a dinosaur, you may not be able to reason with it. But again, you can outsmart it, you can trick it into going somewhere. Like, there is something you can work with to try to, with a tornado, there's basically nothing you can do except just run, and you can't really run because they're very fast. So it's just horrifying to think about and to watch. And what got me thinking then, I was like, okay, thinking through the types of conflict, what are these? And I'm like, really, those both fall into the man versus nature category, I think. Although I guess you could make an argument that certain monster movies would fall in the supernatural category, but I think generally that's not really what the man versus the supernatural is. Like, that's usually going to be more like supernatural forces. So I still think a monster movie and a tornado movie both going to fall under the man versus nature, even though they're so different. And that just goes to show, like, basically the point of having the types of conflict is to just show, like, you can't have a story without conflict. And so what is it going to be between? Is it going to be some kind of internal conflict with the man versus self, or is it going to be something external? And if it's going to be external, is it other people? Is it one other person? Is it, again, some sort of forces that are not natural, or is it actually something in nature? And I think there's a reason that there are so many movies that have that man versus nature, so many of the scary thriller suspense type movies that have that, because there is something obviously just very primal and brutal and horrifying about nature. Like I talked earlier about the beauty of it being outside reading in the blue sky, and there is that, and the creation is so beautiful and wonderful, but it is also terrible and terrifying. And it can range anywhere from something living that's like hunting you or